Hi there, I'm Angel. I'm the nutritionist on the diabetes team, and I wanted to share a little message for you. So after the diagnosis of gestational diabetes, it's kind of a lot to think about. So it's really important to remember to check in. What kind of questions have come up for you since you went to your doctor's appointment, since you learned how to use your glucometer? Between the time that you had the diagnosis and the time that you've come in to meet the diabetes team, what have you looked up so far? What have you researched? Have you Googled? Have you heard from other people? Those are important things to think about. And if there's anything that you heard that's alarming, sometimes you could hear really scary things, definitely take note of those things. So any concerns, any questions, any challenging situations that you already had, maybe with a loved one telling you weird things or something on Facebook or something that people say, take note of those things and then ask one of us about it, because we would love to just talk these things through and help you to feel better about things. And we know how scary it can be to have that diagnosis, especially if you've seen a loved one that had diabetes in your family and had some complications with it. And it's a lot. We ask a lot. So you check your blood sugar, watch what you're eating, get some exercise, all the things. And we're kind of going to bother you a lot too, because we want to check in, because ultimately our goal is the same as your goal, is we want the best outcome for you and baby. And so we do understand that we're asking a lot and that this is something that can be really heavy. And so just remember to check in with yourself, write down these questions, take note of them, and then let's work it out together. So what the heck is gestational diabetes anyway? What is going on in your body? We have hormones, as you know, in our body, and that's how our body communicates. And so to get messages from one place to another, we need our hormones to carry those messages. Okay, so then you get pregnant and you have your placental hormones in the mix. Well, your placental hormones will kind of miscommunicate with your blood sugar regulation hormones. And so that's when things just get a little bit trickier. And so it's not something that you've done. It's not anything that you caused to happen. It just happens sometimes with some women in pregnancy, especially when you have gestational diabetes, like if your mother had it when she was pregnant with you, or if you have diabetes in your family. And so you're not doing anything bad or wrong. It just sometimes happens. It's just a miscommunication with the hormones. So it's sort of like when you play that game telephone and you give a little message, and by the time it gets around to the next person, it's like a completely different message. And that's kind of what's going on. So the good news is, once you have the baby, this should resolve. So you should no longer have any type of diabetes. So however, you are at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes later on. But that doesn't mean that you have to develop type 2 diabetes later on. So with having a healthier lifestyle, you can prevent type 2 diabetes. And so it's not a sentence to have it forever. But now you've already gotten your glucometer and you've gotten all set up, and I'm not going to go over using this, but this is your best tool to find out how your body is reacting to the things that are happening in your life. And so what does affect your blood sugar? So what you're eating, your activity level, stress, sleep. So basically taking really good care of yourself. So holistically making sure that all of those needs are met. The better you take care of yourself, then the more steady your blood sugar will be, the easier it will be to manage. Okay. So when do we test? We're going to ask you to test a lot at first, and we're just trying to gather data here. So without judgment, we're just gathering some data. So test your blood sugar when you first wake up in the morning before you've had anything to eat or drink, and then 1 hour after you have a meal. So at first it's kind of like 4 times a day. Now, if you do want to test more often, that's okay as well, because right now we're just trying to get a good baseline of, on average, what how's your blood sugar reacting to the different factors in your life? Okay, so after we do get that baseline, after the first week or two, we'll know, okay, do you still need to test this often, or can we back off a little bit? And there are other options as well. We could talk about CGMs and things like that. So when you're testing your blood sugar all these times, some things that it's good to keep note on is, so you're going to want to write down your blood sugar, whatever number you got, whatever your result was, and what you've eaten, and other things, questions that have come up, concerns that have come up. Things like, oh, I didn't sleep last night, and then you notice that your blood sugar went up, little things like that. So anything matters. The most important thing to keep track of is your blood sugar numbers and what you've eaten. And so you can write down as much information as you want, so you can become very detailed, or you can write down just kind of the basics, like, oh, I ate a banana. And then we could talk about things like, okay, how big was the banana, if we need to go into depth a little bit more. So but when you're gathering this data, just remember, this is just a number. So all we're doing is trying to get this information so that we can decide what the best treatment options are for you. And you might be pleasantly surprised and realize, oh, my blood sugar, I could do this without much effort, without medication or whatever it is. And so, but we just want to find out, what is your blood sugar doing and what would be the best treatment for you? And so why are we asking you so much about your food? Why do you have to write down all your food things? And that's because carbohydrates are going to increase your blood sugar. So let's talk a little bit about which foods have carbohydrates in them. So as soon as you eat carbohydrates, your body starts turning them into sugar. So any kind of carbohydrate. So if it's like a soda with actual sugar, or if it's a piece of bread or a piece of fruit or pasta or something like that. So you're going to find carbohydrates in anything sweetened. So fruit is sweet, right? So fruit's going to have carbohydrates in it. And then anything with added sugars in it. So like sodas, cakes, desserts, candy, things like that. Anything with added sugar in it is going to be a carbohydrate source. Anything in the bread group, so all the grains, so bread, pasta, rice, cereal, oatmeal, anything that falls into the category of the bread group or grains, whole grains or white bread, it doesn't matter. It's all going to have carbohydrate in it. Other things that have carbohydrate are starchy vegetables. And then I want to show you which ones are the starchy vegetables, because a lot of vegetables are non-starchy. They just don't all fit in that non-starchy category. So the non-starchy vegetables aren't going to increase your blood sugar as much as the starchy vegetables. So like potatoes, squash, corn, peas, beans, the things that taste kind of starchy. And so those kind of foods, it's not that you have to stop eating them. We just have to remember that they have carbohydrates in them, and we have to add in all the carbohydrates together. So we just have to account for it. Other things that have carbohydrates is dairy. So yogurt, milk is going to have more carbohydrate than something like butter or cheese. So those are things that it's easy to read the label on. And so nuts and seeds and beans. Now beans are more starchy. So beans are going to be more carbohydrate dense than nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds have more fat, so they're not going to have quite as much carbohydrate. But as you start writing things down and getting more comfortable with recognizing carbohydrates, pretty soon it'll be pretty easy to spot. So when I'm going to say a lot like one choice of carbohydrate or one serving of carbohydrate, but what do I mean by that? So one serving of carbohydrate is about the inside of the palm of your hand. So a serving size that's about a third or a half a cup. And so you can see this is a third cup. This is a half a cup. So like about that much potatoes or about that much rice. And that's going to be about one serving of carbohydrate. Now, right now, you don't really have to get it exact. So a good estimate is fine. So using the palm of your hand, which you always have your hands with you. So using the palm of your hand is going to be ideal, because you could just estimate And then we could fine tune it later on, but right now, let's just get a good guess. And so what does one serving carbohydrate look like? About this much yogurt, about, let's see, in 1 glass of milk, there is 12 grams of carbohydrate. One serving of carbohydrate is 15 grams. So one 8-ounce cup of milk is about 1 carbohydrate serving. 1 piece of regular sized bread is a carbohydrate serving. So this would be 1 serving, like a half of a bagel, 1 serving. Sometimes there are those giant bagels. That would be a good time to read the labels and find out, okay, is there more than 15 grams of carbohydrate? And it's not to, it's just to get an idea of how much carbohydrate, not to recommend an amount. So if you're looking at it, we want to make sure that we're calculating accurately. So just look at the serving size, look at the carbohydrate amount. That's all you have to look at. You don't have to look at the sugars, the fibers, or anything like that. Just look at total serving size and then the carbohydrate amount. So like this little baby PB&J, that's about 1 carbohydrate serving. I mean, if you went really heavy on the jelly, you might add another carbohydrate serving with that too. But again, that would be another opportunity to look at the labels and figure it out. So this is, these fruits are, they're kind of a medium size. And so a smaller size fruit that would be a little bit smaller than this would be about 1 size of carbohydrate. A bigger fruit, like those big apples or big peaches, that would be 2 servings of carbohydrate. And so if you cut one of those in half and you had it in the palm of your hand, it would be about the right size. This size fruit would have about 25 grams of carbohydrate, so almost 2 servings, not quite. And then this is a little piece of cornbread, and you can see this is about 1 serving of carbohydrate. This banana is about 2 servings of carbohydrate. And 4 ounces of juice, 1 serving of carbohydrate. And I wanted to show you a little pasta. So this serving of pasta is 1 serving of carbohydrate. Yes, it's smaller than what we're usually going to put on our plate when we're about to have a meal, but you can have more. This is just an example of how much 1 serving of carbohydrate is. Okay, so now we did the serving sizes, but how much do we need in a day? We need to have probably about 15 grams or 1 serving for your breakfast and your snacks, and then about 3 servings or 45 grams of carbohydrate in your lunch and dinner. And when you're pregnant, an interesting thing happens. When you're sleeping, your body thinks, oh no, she's starving the baby. She hasn't eaten anything for hours. So it will start to release glucose into your blood. So now your blood sugar is going up higher. So a lot of times it's to protect the baby and to make sure that the baby's not starving, but a lot of times you'll wake up in the morning with higher blood sugar. So some women aren't actually able to eat any carbohydrate in the morning or very little carbohydrate. And others can eat more. I've been surprised that with a few women have been able to eat just a normal amount of carbohydrate in the morning and their blood sugar stay pretty even. And so that's why we want to test and collect that data, because we want to see, we don't know how you're going to react to the carbohydrate that you're eating, and we won't know unless you're testing. And so usually in the morning, about 1 serving of carbohydrate. Now, what can help to try to keep your blood sugar to not go so high in the early morning is to have a snack before you go to bed. That's one thing. And you want to aim for a little bit of carbohydrate. So at least like 15 grams, maybe up to 30 grams. And then, but you also want to add in some protein and fat. And you could also add in some fiber. So when you're adding in protein, fat, and fiber, those 3 things are going to help keep your blood sugar steady longer. So for example, if you were to just have a soda or a juice, it's only carbohydrate. Your blood sugar would spike up, but then it will go down. And your pancreas is trying really hard to even that out. And so we want to give your pancreas a break and keep your blood sugar as steady as possible. So adding in more protein, adding in more fat, and adding in more fiber is going to help to keep it steady longer. So recognizing which foods you enjoy that are higher in protein and higher in fat and higher in fiber is a good thing to start keeping note of as well. And then think about food pairing. So some people have like a small PB&J with extra peanut butter on whole grain bread as a nighttime snack, or yogurt and nuts. And those things pair well together. It's up to you. A lot of our nighttime snacks are really carbohydrate dense, like popcorn and things like that. So just trying to think, can I add in nuts? Can I add in avocado? What about, do you like hard-boiled eggs or cheese or things like this? So things that are higher in fat, higher in protein. That's what we want to aim for with our nighttime snack. That'll help to keep your blood sugar steady. And you do want to still have some carbohydrate with the nighttime snack. And another thing that's helpful is in the morning to have very little carbohydrate. So maybe one serving of carbohydrate, or like you have eggs with just one piece of toast. And then if you're used to having cereal, you have the cereal later on, like in the mid-morning. And that would be, so you're still getting that taste of cereal and it's still satisfying you with the food that makes you feel the most comfortable. But you're not having it right when you wake up, when your blood sugar might go up the highest. Okay, so a lot of women find that having carbohydrate, you could have a little bit more carbohydrate in like the afternoon, evening time. So you wouldn't want to have like a lot of carbohydrate right before you go to bed, but between that lunch and dinner time is usually a time where you can have a little bit more. So most of the time, it's good to stay under 45 grams or 3 servings at one time. And so that would be 3 servings for lunch, 3 servings for dinner. But some people are able to have like more like 4 servings at lunch or dinner or an afternoon snack. And so if you find that you're really missing certain foods, like a lot of times people miss fruit and they're used to waking up and having fruit in the morning. And so maybe we'll just switch that timing around a little bit and have fruit in the afternoon instead. And it might not be ideal to your comfort level of timing of what you're eating, but it will help to keep your blood sugar a little more steady. And so that's pretty helpful. It's good to try to eat every 4 to 5 hours. So I would say it's good to have like a breakfast and a snack, lunch and a snack, dinner and a snack. And then for all your snacks and your breakfast, aim for 15 grams or 1 serving of carbohydrate. And for your lunch and dinner, aim for 3 servings or 45 grams of carbohydrate. And so that allows you to eat every about 3 hours. Now, if you notice that you've gone longer than 4 to 5 hours, we don't want that protective mechanism to kick in again, and we don't want your body to start releasing sugar into your blood. And so, trying to eat a little bit more often. And you can experiment. The only way that you're going to know really is by experimenting with your glucometer. So if you're curious, or maybe you're not feeling so well and you're thinking, does this have something to do with my blood sugar? Test it to find out. Test it, take a note of what was going on so that we know. Okay, so we talked about when to test, we talked about what makes your blood sugar go up, and now let's talk about what can make your blood sugar go down. So the best thing, the fastest way to get your blood sugar to go down is physical activity. So it doesn't have to be like a whole gym workout or anything like that. Literally just getting your heart rate up for a few minutes is extraordinarily helpful. So for example, taking a walk before you eat and after you eat, or before or just after you eat for about 10 minutes is enough to be really helpful. So if you notice that your blood sugar is up higher than you expected it to be, or starting to go towards the higher end of the range, that would be a good time to go take a quick walk. And most of the time it's something that we could do pretty easily, even if you're just walking around your own house. It could be anything though. You could dance around with your kids. You could do lunge walks down the hallway over and over. Eventually your heart rate's going to get up and you're going to get out of breath. Sometimes you could just do sit down, stand up. So literally just standing up and sitting down. You could do that while you're watching television, even riding a bike. Anything that gets your heart rate elevated is going to be helpful. Also, walking helps to decrease your labor time. So that's always a plus to keep doing that while you're pregnant, right? If you exercise for 30 minutes every single day, that's going to help hold you over for a whole entire day. So what that does is it allows your cells to be able to open up better and be more receptive to the sugar that's in your blood. And so it's kind of like taking a dose of medicine. And so we're getting that sugar out of your blood and into your cells where your body can use the nutrients. So it's not just floating around on the outside of your cells in your blood where your body can't use the nutrients that you've eaten, but neither can the baby. And so that's why we always recommend a little bit of physical activity. Okay, so let's review a little bit. What are we going to ask you to do? We're going to ask you to test your blood sugar when you first wake up and 1 hour after you eat your meals. At first, this kind of seems like a lot, right? So in this logbook that we're going to give you, you can write down what you ate and what your blood sugar was. And this is really handy because you can look at it and think, oh my gosh, my blood sugar goes way up after I eat this, or whoa, that's so cool. I thought it would go up way after I ate that, but it actually didn't. So we're going to ask you to test your blood sugar and keep track of it. Also keep track of what you're eating. And that's just so we could help you plan better and we could see it's not at all for judgment. You're not going to get any red checks on there or anything. It's for self-discovery. And it's also just to help manage your blood sugar a little bit better. So if we look and we see, oh, when you eat this combination of foods, your blood sugar doesn't really go up too much, then that's good for us to know because then we can help make recommendations for other similar types of food combinations for you that will work pretty well. Or if we see that there's a certain food that you really like, but it makes your blood sugar go up, we could help you think of options on other foods that you would really like, or a way to maybe combine it with other foods so that your blood sugar will stay more steady. It's usually as simple as that. I don't think I've ever had a situation where I told someone to just stop eating something ever. So that's why being honest is the most helpful thing for yourself mostly, but also for us to help you because we're partnering with you with this, right? We're trying to take some of the pressure off so that you don't have to think about this all the time. So what else did we talk about? We talked about what kind of foods make your blood sugar go up, and that's carbohydrates. So what are carbohydrates? Anything in the bread group. This is a weird little mac and cheese, and this is a weird little fry bread. And so anything in the bread group. So grains, rice, pasta, cereals, breads, everything that you would consider to be in the bread group is going to increase your blood sugar. Whole grains, they're better because you're adding more fiber and you're also adding a lot more nutrients. Other things is fruit and fruit juice. So anything that tastes sweet and anything with already added sweeteners. And then dairy, especially yogurt and milk, those are the things that are going to have the most carbohydrate in the dairy group, and starchy veggies. So these are beans, but funny little beans, but potatoes, corn, squash, things like that. Those are all starchy veggies. And those things are going to increase your blood sugar. And then just a little recap, those are the starchy veggies. Everything else is non-starchy. And you cannot overdose on non-starchy vegetables. I dare you to try to get your blood sugar up with non-starchy vegetables, especially the leafy greens. So how do we moderate our carbohydrates? Well, first, we're going to use a measurement of about 1/3 cup or about 1/2 cup, which as you can see is about the same size as the inside of the palm of your hand. So use that as a good measure, which is, you can see it's about that much, and that's about a half or a third a cup of the carbohydrate rich foods. And those are the kinds of foods you're going to want to really pay attention to. And so how many servings do we want? Let me give you one of these pages, and this tells you for breakfast, probably only one serving at a time. So what this looks like for a lot of people is to maybe just have one piece of toast with their eggs, or maybe even have just like a half of a fruit. I'm going to say eggs because eggs are easy breakfast food. Some people don't like eggs. There's other things you could eat in the morning. And if you have difficulties with that, we can talk about that and figure out something that would be more appropriate for you that you're going to like. Now for your snacks, same deal. About 1 or 2 servings of carbohydrate per snack. So that looks like about a cup of about 2/3 to 1 cup full of carbohydrate. Okay, so this is 6 ounces of juice, and it's about 1.5 carbohydrate servings. And so if you were going to have something like this for your snack, this would be sufficient carbohydrates, and you wouldn't want to have something else like a granola bar with it. Maybe some cashews or some meat, or some cheese with the rolled up, like with meat, like the lunch meat around it, you know, would be a good snack. You could have as much non-starchy vegetables, much meat, as much cheese as you want. Should not really increase your blood sugar. And if it does, that'll be good information for us to know. Then we can have a better treatment, well, more appropriate treatment plan, I think. And then for lunch and dinner, about 3 servings of carbohydrates. So that's about 45 grams of carbohydrate at one time. Now, if you find that you're feeling limited, especially if you're having 0 to 1 serving first thing in the morning, then your mid-morning time, you might be able to have like that cereal that you really wanted to have earlier in the morning. And you might be able to have a snack that has a little bit more. Between mid-morning and mid-afternoon, starting to go towards the evening, most people are able to have a little bit more carbohydrate. But keep in mind, no more than 3 servings at one time. So that's 3 palm-sized servings of all the carbohydrate foods that you're eating added up all together. And that looks like about 45 grams of carbohydrate if you're counting the carbohydrates. And then an evening snack. You're going to want to have an evening snack to hold you over so that your body doesn't think you're starving the baby. An evening snack, at least 1 serving of carbohydrate. So at least 5 to 15 grams of carbohydrate before you go to bed. You might be able to have up to 30, but I wouldn't go much more than that. And so not much more than 2 servings in the morning. And then always add some fat and protein at the same time for your before bed snack. Now we're going to give you a lot of books too. This one is one of the ones that we give out sometimes. It has all you need to know about gestational diabetes. It reviews all the things that I just talked about. And this is good for referencing, especially because there's so much information coming at you right now that you might not remember everything. I'd actually be very surprised if you did remember everything. And so that's totally normal. That's what we all forget things when we leave the doctors, especially after diagnosis like this, right? There's a lot going on in your mind. This one's my favorite one, and it's the Sweet Success book. The reason that it's my favorite is because it pretty much has the same information as the basics book, but it asks the questions in the table of contents like what we're thinking. This is what we're asking ourselves. What can happen to me and my baby? What can I do to help? Is this my fault? Is this normal? Are these certain things happening to me normal? Things like that. Things like we're thinking. And you know, as soon as you become pregnant, you immediately get paranoid, right? And you think that everything's out to hurt your child. I know, I remember feeling like that. And so we do have all these thoughts. It's totally normal. And I love that book because that book will help to just really put it in a easy to understand way, in the way that we're naturally thinking. It's not too clinical at all. Another one is this little book that we hand out, and it's really cute because it has little baby pictures on it, but it also has all the information, but without like overwhelming you. And so those are some of the options that you might get. I would suggest tabbing the pages that you're probably going to be thinking about most frequently, such as how much carbohydrates do I eat, and when do I test my blood sugar, and what are the ranges that I'm supposed to be trying to stay under. Now, this is my food plan, and my food plan has lists of different carbohydrate-rich foods, and it tells you, like, for example, a bagel with that's 4 to 5 inches has 48 to 67 grams of carbohydrate. And so it's not very comprehensive, but it's a little guide. Another thing you could do is look these things up. Just search literally what you're thinking. Carbohydrates in bagel, for example, carbs in yogurt. And then you could even get one of those apps like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or My Sugar, and you could scan the food that you're eating and it will tell you how much carbohydrates it's in it. You could search the exact foods. A lot of times a nutrition label will just pop right up on Google search page. If you want help with figuring out how much carbohydrates is in some of the foods that you're eating, just reach out, because that's what I'm here for, right? And so why are we asking you to do all these things? Why are we paying so much attention to you? Why are we calling you all the time and bothering you so much? It's because ultimately we want the best outcome for you and baby, right? And what could happen if your blood sugar is too high is the high blood sugar is actually toxic to the baby. And at first, we want to make sure that baby develops just fine. So in the early part of your pregnancy, we want to make sure that everything develops as it's supposed to. So arms, legs, fingers, toes, organs, especially the organs, we want to make sure everything's developing perfectly. And then as you progress into your pregnancy and later on, we want to make sure the baby doesn't get too big. And so baby's too big, that can present complications when you're delivering. And that's no fun. It's no fun for you. It's no fun for baby. We don't want anybody to be in distress when you're having baby. And also, some things that can happen is if your blood sugar is high and baby's in that environment, so baby's pancreas works just fine, right? So it's processing all that sugar and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes after the baby's born, if the blood sugar is high when you're pregnant, and then as soon as you deliver, they're cut off from that supply, and then it drops down, and that could be like an emergency situation after you have the baby. And so that can be scary, and we want to prevent that. We want you to be able to hold baby and have the bonding time afterwards, and not have to have baby separated from you and whisked off to be taken care of in the ICU. Well, it's like the baby ICU. And so that's why we are paying so much attention to you, and that's why you're so important to us, because we just want the best outcome for everybody involved, right? And so you do have a whole team here, and we all have the same goals in mind that you do. And so whatever your goals are is what our goals are. So I encourage you to just feel comfortable to call and reach out with any kind of questions. Even if they seem silly, it's okay. Reach out with all those questions. And if you see something online, like or in a Facebook group or something like that, and you're wondering about it, I don't want to discourage you from doing your own research on things, but definitely reach out if something just seems a little bit confusing or somebody isn't being really nice about things. And so best wishes, and hopefully I'll be meeting with you either virtually or talking to you on the phone soon.